Members, can we get to order, please? Thank you. Is everybody happy? Right, I'm Steve Wine, I'm the Chair of the Council. Just a quick few introductions. To my right is Dawn Gretrix, who's the Vice Chair, and then David Burton, who is the Civic Chair. And then to my left is Helen Mitchell, who's the Monitoring Officer, Jason Spencer, who works within the Monitoring Officer's Department, and Lucy, who's going to take the minutes for us very kindly tonight. And there's Jim there on the old recordings. Now, what I'd like to just point out that there are no fire drills planned, and I ask that all those present to familiarise themselves with the fire procedure drills on these screens overhead. Briefly, exit is from the door that you came in, and you exit the entrance through the main entrance, and unless you're otherwise advised to do so. For those present, please be aware that this meeting is being recorded live for subsequent broadcast on the Council's website. If anyone present does not wish to have their image captured, please make yourself known to Lucy at the end of this table, and or to Jim, and suitable action will be taken. For members, I'd also like to just raise the issue that we are in a pre-election period and a time of heightened sensitivity, and it used to be called PERDA, so we just need to monitor ourselves, reduce ourselves a little bit if we can in what we may or may not wish to say. So that's that. I'd also like to say that it's a pleasure to chair this meeting that marks the 50th anniversary of the District Council, which was established in April 1974. It goes back to the Local Government Act of 1972, when a reduced number of councils in England and Wales went from 1,245 down to 412. West Derbyshire District Council replaced the various urban and rural district councils in our area, and the first councillors were elected in 1973, serving as shadow authority for a year until handover date of the 1st of April 1974. It means that David Burton, who's a fine gentleman across there, he served on the initial council, and unfortunately he's the only person left. Yeah, rather a gruesome thought, but yeah. So basically, he served a total of 42 consecutive years until his retirement from the council in 2015. West Derbyshire District Council was then renamed Derbyshire Dales District Council in 1987. And in relation to David Burton, the Civic Chair will be saying a few words in a little while when we get to his actual area of expertise and he tells us what he's been doing. Right, so we'll open the meeting now with apologies for absence. Lucy, can we have the apologies, please?
Thank you, Chair. We've received apologies from Councillors Archer, Boynton, Bull, Flitter, G, Whitehead and Wilton.
Thank you very much. Right, public participation. I've not been advised of any public participation, but what you will have is some items in front of you, some statements from various people in relation predominantly to item 11 on the agenda. They have been sent out to you on the email today as well, so if you could make sure that you have digested them. I'll give you a few more minutes before item 11 if you still need it. So the next thing is interests. Has anybody got any interests? And you're required to declare the existence or nature of any interest you may have into any subsequent agenda items. Has anybody got any interest that they wish to disclose, please, or declare? No interest, thank you. As Councillor Flitter is unable to attend this evening, I'm going to ask Councillor Slack to give the announcements as leader of the Council. Councillor Slack, thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good evening, everyone. As one of the deputy leaders with Steve away in Australia in the sunshine, it falls to me to give the leaders' announcements. As we come towards the end of the first year of the new administration of the Progressive Allowance, it's been a very busy year. Many working groups contributing towards the creation of a new corporate plan, which I believe in the coming years will see with benefits from the new corporate plan in more social and affordable housing, climate change policy, in the council being carbon neutral by 2030, also help and advice for businesses in the Derbyshire Dales on being carbon neutral. Good news to report from the Housing Director, Rob Coggins. The government has announced round 3 of the Local Authority Housing Fund. Derbyshire Dales has submitted an expression of interest to provide up to 27 new dwellings through the programme. The focus of the programme is provided for homes of people who are homeless. We will hear if we've been successful by the end of April, and the full report will come through the committees and the council in due course. Leader Steve Flitter attended a business breakfast in March. The event was organised by the District Council, which was a successful event, with businesses from all round Derbyshire attending. They're very pleased to hear that the support on offer from the District Council. Also attending was prospective candidates for the mayoral elections for the East Midland Combined Authority, which is contested in May. The Environment Services were carrying out a litter picking events over the last 4 weeks from areas as far apart as Brailsford up to Stony Middleton to keeping Britain tidy. Over 13 groups and individuals have taken part in this district event, which was very, very well successful. Public consultation on Ashman Park last summer. The public consultation was carried out on the Ashton Park for the residents and visitors' views. So with the information captured will be held in person in consultation on a day at 9:30 till 12 p.m. on April the 20th at Ashbourne Methodist Church. So if you want to go along, you can find out everything what the public have put forward. The Community Safety Partnership has assured that Derbyshire Dales is the safest place and the lowest crime in all 9 districts in Derbyshire. So it's something to be really thankful for, a place we live in. Just to conclude, in March, Paul Wilson and myself attended an inaugural meeting of the East Midland Combined Authority at Chesterfield Caesar Hotel. Its speakers were from Derby City Council, Derby County Council, Nottingham County Council and Nottingham City. All the leaders gave a similar address on the great opportunities for business and industry for the region, and went on to say that the region could grow significantly on this combined authority. Districts and borough councils would only have 2 representatives in Derbyshire on the board, which Derbyshire represents would be from the High Peak and 1 from Chesterfield. Also, Nottingham would have the same representation of 2 district councillors from borough county councils. The rest of the district councils and boroughs could attend meetings but could not vote on the issues. In the coffee break in between the speakers, the general opinion from the district council and borough councils was that we would be at the end of the queue when it comes to financial support for projects, and the cities and counties would be the main beneficiaries of this combined authority. So thank you for listening to me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Slack. Moving on to item 5 on the agenda. As Chairman's announcements, I'd like to introduce Councillor David Burton. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. I'm going to do it in reverse order, so David, remain seated just for a little longer. First of all, a big thank you. As my year comes to a conclusion, most members have very kindly given me a donation towards the civic charity Send a Child to Hucklow. I am extremely grateful. I am now over £3,000 for that charity, and with a bit of luck, we might reach the point where we're able to fund around 40 children. So that's absolutely superb. I will have a week on Saturday, and Jim Fern will give the details the early part of next week. A coffee cake morning at a ladies' home, the Glenwood Cottages in Two Dales. But to take that information in, that will be given out next week. But anyone, whether it be a member or an officer, is welcome. That will be held between 10:30 and 1 o'clock. I was very moved a couple of weeks ago with Councillor Hobson. We attended the Bakewell Town Council service. The current mayor is Councillor Alison Hill, and it was an exceptionally moving service. It brought the best of community together, and I just want to publicly acknowledge the courage, I think, of Alison, who was involved in a life-changing accident. But the sparkle and the commitment that Alison has for Bakewell, I really do commend, and it was seriously an honour to be present at that particular service. So, I'm not electioneering now. I'm relieved to relate this story to you. Some years ago, I was in a field with David Fern, banging in a stake, and the head of the hammer flew off and just literally missed him. So it's lovely that you're present tonight, David. And it was back in 1995, because that was my first opportunity when I served as chair of the district, that you then commenced for 2 years as leader of this council. And there was tremendous respect for you, David. I know on a number of occasions that Lewis Rose too was a support, and in many ways was very generous in his capacity as leader of the Conservative group at that point. But we are honoured that you have felt able to come tonight, David. And there is a universal respect in Darley-Dale and in the wider area, and from all of us that were involved in politics and in local council during the time that you were leader and a member of the council. You brought, a lot of reason, a lot of common sense and a decency, I think, to this council. So, David, I've got the pleasant task of presenting you with a couple of things. Now, Jim, am I right in assuming you've been responsible for the photograph? Amongst others. I've not even seen, I know it's up on the wall, but David, I don't know where you're going to put this. But it's that first council of 1974. So,
good heavens, don't lose young. So young. Yeah. Do it properly.
right. I'm sure David is not rushing off, so please have a look at this afterwards. And there are some significant characters, I think that's the polite way to put it.
I'll tell you all the stories
here.
about them if you're interested.
And also it's our pleasure, David, because a great support throughout has been Sandra, who too was a member of this council. So please accept these flowers for Sandra with the good wishes of the council.
She's been here, but she's going in for a hip operation on Monday, and she doesn't want to catch a cold off you or anything like that. So she's here in spirit. Well, thank you, David, for those kind words. Am I all right with that?
Yep.
The first thing I noticed when I came tonight was the improvement in security. I must say we never had that difficulty getting in here like I had today without a badge. I don't think they'll let me out afterwards, will they? But 50 years ago, it was a very different world, as I'm sure you realise. That the new district council, which was called West Derbyshire District Council because it was equivalent of the constituency at the time. And we were elected in 1973 and spent 10 months employing people, holding interviews and employing staff. I felt, as a teacher, I felt totally inadequate in this process. I had not been on a council before, yet I was placed on a committee that selected the Director of Technical Services. I hadn't a clue what technical services were, and so after that experience, I withdrew. I never actually sat on any further selection committees because I didn't feel as though I was qualified to do it. And in those days, you didn't have any kind of training beforehand when you arrived here. You just learnt on the job, which was quite an experience when you consider some of the characters that are on this photograph who've been in local government for years. And I have to mention one or two of them and pay credit to them. The old Labour councillor for Darley-Dale, John Turner, everyone called him Jack, but John Turner was a county councillor and a district councillor at the same time. And in committee meetings, if you wanted to speak, you had to jump to your feet, a bit like in the Houses of Parliament. And one of the most humiliating things was, I was in my early 30s, but John Turner could leap to his feet faster than I could. So it was very difficult getting in to actually say anything. But I learnt a lot during that time, and I made a lot of very good friends. Amongst the officers as well as the councillors and of all parties. And I've always thought that this council has always been to me a friendly council. It's not divided by politics in the same way as it is up the hill, for instance. And I like that myself. And I think everybody on that council who was elected had the intention of making a success of the district council, even though there were certain divisions, nothing to do with politics, but because they were inheritors of the rural district councils and the urban district councils. And I remember the first leader of the council having an argument with the chairman, in David's situation, about who was in charge, which was rather amusing. I found it amusing anyway. But I have lots of happy memories of that time. I think we had a lot of responsibilities that you don't have. We were a housing authority. And during one period, we built quite a few houses, which I was very pleased about, under the leadership of George Ward from Ashbourne, a Conservative councillor from Ashbourne. The first year when we had the AGM, in other words, 50 years ago tonight, what had happened before the meeting, the leader of the independents had gone round everybody, that's to the Labour Party members and the Liberal members, and said, if we all vote together, we can outvote the Conservatives. And I was naive enough to think that this was a good idea. And I remember Lewis being very upset when he didn't become the first leader of the council. But he learnt from that experience. And the following year, he persuaded enough independents to join the Conservative Party, so he had a majority. So he had the last laugh. But it wasn't all about politics. It was all about doing good for the district. And that's my treasured memory of this place altogether, being a team, as it were. There were times when we fell out, but it never got personal, which I'm grateful for. These days, it seems politicians make things personal straight away, and I don't particularly care for that. We're all different in our ways, and the members of this council on here all had their different strengths and weaknesses. And if anybody wants to learn anything about them, any of them they knew, just tell me and I'll let you know. Anyway, thank you very much for inviting me. It's been a rare pleasure coming back here after 42 years. Well, more than 42 years, what am I talking about? 50 years.
Can we give him a round of applause?
Thank you, Councillor Burton, and thank you, ex-Councillor Fern. Thank you. Thanks very much. We'll move on now to item 6 on the agenda, which is to receive the minutes of the committees. and the minute book has been circulated. I shan't go through them all, but there are quite a number ending on the 14th of March. Would anybody like to move that we receive those minutes, please? Councillor Shelley, and does that find a seconder? Councillor Burfoot. So it's been moved and it's been seconded. Can we move to the vote now, please? All those in favour? All those against? Abstentions? That's moved unanimously. Thank you. Right, item 7, questions under the rule of procedure. I've not received any questions. Item 8. This is a proposal on notice of a motion, and I'll hand over now to Councillor Bob Butcher, who's proposing a debate under Rule 16 of Procedure 16. Councillor Butcher, there we are. Okay.
Is it okay to stand up?
If you wish to stand up, please stand up. Thank you.
Okay. So thank you, Chair. A banking hub for Bakewell was a top priority of my election campaign when I was elected in February, so very recently. And the proposal tonight's an important stage in delivering on that, I hope. So I'm grateful to the voters of Bakewell Ward for asking me to represent them and do my best for the ward and for Derbyshire Dales more generally. I heard from many voters in the campaign about how the then existing banking service was important for them given its imminent closure. It often came up on the doorstep, especially for people who felt strongly that they did not want to trust online banking, interestingly, and for those who are not able to or feel intimidated by using online services. And as it happens, I met a resident just yesterday who was clear she could not and would not want to use online banking. Her last experience was when her then partner took control of her account through online banking, excluded her from it, and proceeded to use her money as his own. So a shocking case. In addition, a banking service is important for the many small businesses that use or rely on cash operations. In Bakewell, there is one of the UK's leading livestock markets at the Agricultural Business Centre and 3 other business estates, with many small businesses and medium businesses, as well as many shops and cafes and outlets in Bakewell itself. The population of the town itself is around 4,000, a significant proportion of whom are elderly. More importantly, Bakewell is the principal service centre for a large number of surrounding villages and areas, including Ashwell-in-the-Water, Overhaddon and Sheldon, and also much wider, Longstone, Lytton, Tideswell, Hucklow, Eam, Grindleford, Stony Middleton, Baslow, Pilsley, Taddington, Moniash, Yorgreave, Stanton, Roseley, Beeley and many others. A banking service in Bakewell is needed for these villages, not just for the town itself. This reinforces the commitment by the new council to sustain all our communities through action, not just words. Faced with similar closures, other towns have established banking hubs where the high street banks and in some situations the post office combine to jointly provide a daily service. Belper and Clay Cross are notable examples in Derbyshire. I've only been a member of the council for a short time, but I have to say I've been impressed, both by the officers I've met and by the councillors. The council is remarkably well run financially, and the senior staff are positive, open, dynamic, keen to help the people of Derbyshire Dales and to support the councillors in doing that. So the effectiveness and capability of the council inspires me to ask to put forward the following motion. That the council take the initiative in engaging as appropriate with partners, including the Member of Parliament, Bakewell Town Council, the East Midland Chamber, Derbyshire County Council, the Peak District National Park Authority and the National Farmers Union to proactively support the development of such a banking hub. This proposal emphasises a cross-party partnership approach. The proposal for a banking hub does have wide political support, and we've seen some messages in the papers that have been put on the table today, including from the Conservatives, the Liberal Democrats and the Greens and others. So reflecting that, it is great that the leader of the Conservatives, Councillor Susan Hobson, is pleased to second the proposal, and will do so in a minute, I expect. The amount of work required by the council for this proposal is not thought to be great. A first step is to engage with the organisation that arranges bank hubs and also with local partners, and following that to gain active engagement from potential users of the banking hub. So these are similar to actions the council takes in other areas where it works with local residents to help them apply for grants or take forward improvements, as there are examples around the district. So overall, this proposal seems to have the potential for great benefits for a large part of the north of the district and maybe even a little bit below that uses Bakewell for its services, to reflect well on the council in taking the initiative on this topic and to require a low level of time and cost in doing so. I therefore move this proposal.
Councillor Butcher, can I just ask, because we've been presented with an amended motion, and I think you've just read out the original motion.
I don't have the amended the papers in front of me.
It is? We're happy?
Thank you. No, what I read out was the amended motion.
Okay, that's fine. I just want to clarify that.
Yeah.
So it's the one that everybody's got in front of them. That we're now going to ask questions. Any questions for... excuse me for 1 second. Does that find a seconder? Councillor Hobson, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to second this motion. I know if Councillor G had been here as the other Bakewell member, he would also have given it his full support. When I first moved to Bakewell, there were 3 banks and 1 building society, and now there are none. I was happy with our MP, other Derbyshire County Council and Derbyshire Dales District Councillors to be at the beginning of the campaign to stop the NatWest closure. Sadly, that failed. And we must now work together to establish a banking hub in Bakewell for the benefit of all. Councillor Butcher has clarified to me that there are no external costs expected of the council at this stage and would need relevant approval if any such costs did arise. I would ask you all to support this motion for the good of Bakewell and its wider communities. As ex-councillor Fern has said, it's good to see the District Council working for the benefit of the district together in a consensual way. Thank you.
Thank you. Has anybody got any questions? And if not, we can move into debate. Oh, Councillor Chapman, sorry.
Thanks, Chair. Well, I had a couple of points, but the points I was going to ask about is actually on the agenda, but it's not included in this in the piece of paper I've got before me. So I'll just point out what I was going to say, and I think Sue's probably answered that in part. And that's the final line, which says on the official agenda, to draft in appropriate external resources or expertise to support the work. I was going to ask if we could look at that in a bit more detail, because I wouldn't like to think that this council at this moment in time is appropriating funding towards a banking type hub. And the other question I was going to, or statement, really question, it says on Bakewell members on the agenda, but I thought because of the importance to that area, maybe it would be helpful to expand to maybe other villages such as Longston and that kind of thing. Because although it is in Bakewell, it certainly has, as Councillor Butcher pointed out, it has a much wider effect on the local communities.
Thank you, Councillor Chapman. Now the amendment is there, and that I must admit that leapt out the page of me a little bit on the original one. Now the amendment has been there. Are you satisfied with that in relation to that?
I would have to ask, why are they different?
Because it was agreed that there'd be an amendment, and that's the amendment. It's just that wording at the end, that's all.
Right, okay, yeah, I'm fine with that.
And in relation to your other question, if I may answer it, I think it's very important that everybody collaboratively in that area has a say in what happens for the banking hub, and I think it's got to be, you know, across parties, it's got to be everything, but we've just got to find out a solution where people don't have to travel miles to go and bank their money. Okay. Councillor.
I wholly support the banking hub in Bakewell. Seeing the success of Belper, I think it'll be a wonderful thing. Has anybody looked at the mobile banking? We get it in Ashbourne at the moment, and we also get it in Matlock and Wirksworth. Has anybody approached NatWest to see if they will also add Bakewell onto that schedule?
Well, I can ask Councillor Butcher if he wants to answer that. Are you able to answer that?
I can answer it in the sense that it's not something I've personally looked into as yet. It is obviously a possibility, and there's no reason why it shouldn't be thought about at the same time as a banking hub. Shall I refer to the earlier question as well while I'm speaking, which is about the change in the proposal? Just
You can do whilst you're there.
okay. Just to say that the change had there were two changes. One was the changing the word lead to initiative, so it just made it appear that the council is pushing things along, but not setting up a banking hub itself. That was never the intention. And the reference to external resources was really if the demand on officer time was quite difficult to meet because of other pressures, that the officers should think about the possibility of using external staff if necessary. But in the end, as we thought through it, the amount of officer time needed is relatively small, and that isn't an essential requirement.
Thank you. Councillor Lees, you got a question? Are there any more questions? If not, we will move to debate. So we'll move into debate. Anybody got anything to say? Councillor Lees.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, going back to the bus that travels round, I mean, it is only a short period of time which it does come to Ashbourne, which is only 3/4 of an hour. So it's used quite heavily in that time frame that it is in Ashbourne, but it is a useful bit of kit for somebody that doesn't want internet banking, etc., like you've explained. And you know, it's worth going down the avenue of looking into it in the interim till you get the banking hub established. And I'm in full support of your proposal because, like ourselves in Ashbourne, we've only got one bank now, and anybody that wants NatWest has to travel to Derby, so it's quite a task. The only good point about it is we've ended up with another pub. Thank you.
Did you say hub or pub? Oh. Right, Councillor Slack. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Like Councillor Lees, Wirksworth has NatWest coming in and also Lloyd's starting on market days. One follows in the morning, the other follows in the afternoon, and also one on Friday and one on Saturday. It is very well used because the market's quite a success now. It gets a lot of people there in good weather, of course, and the vehicle mobile banking hubs are very well used indeed. So it's disappointing to see banks close in your vicinity. It is disappointing, but it's a sign of the times, unfortunately, with internet banking and as it is now, and things are changing and we've got to adapt to it, unfortunately. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Slack. Any more? Councillor Buttle.
I'd just like to thank Councillor Butcher for this. I think it's something which we need to push forward on, try and get it to actually work. It would be really nice for the people of Bakewell and environs of which we represent no end of. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else wish to speak on this matter? Councillor Linthwaite.
Thank you, Chair. It's just a comment about the mobile banking service. In my experience, they offer quite a limited service, and quite often, particularly elderly people wanting to make cash transactions, send birthday presents overseas or something like that, end up having to go to a branch anyway. So I think the hub would hopefully fill in the gaps that the mobile banks are leaving. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I was going to say something on this, as I'm quite keen as well, but I wanted to get some actual facts from Sarah Dines first, because she's, I wanted to get it straight from the horse's mouth, so to speak. And she's sent me the following, which is, the only way we can get a banking hub is if we get behind Sarah Dines' campaign. When the announcement was made that Bakewell NatWest was set to close, it was the Conservatives who were there the very next day outside the bank conducting a petition.
Is this, can I just ask, I
appreciate
that.
Political? Yeah, no.
Is it not?
I
think it potentially is. I mean, I think everybody's aware that there is a campaign.
Yeah.
And I think it's very excellent. It's excellent that there is a campaign, and I think it's working collaboratively.
Okay, well,
I just don't think we need to go into too much about who's done what and this, that, and the other. If you know, just in this current climate, if you come back after the 2nd of May, you can say whatever you want.
Okay, thank you.
That's good.
This isn't all political, though.
Sorry?
This isn't all political.
Well, can you make sure that you pick out the bits that aren't then? Thank you.
Well, the most relevant part is that MPs are best placed to work with that link and the FCA. Unfortunately, current criteria says
please,
that...
Point of order, this is political. Please stop him.
I think if it had been your words, it would be different. But if you can just... if the MP wished to put her representations forward, she could have asked to speak this evening and turned up.
Well, just one...
So the same thing.
Well, she would, but he's saying it third. Can you just, please, can you, I'm not going to let you speak any further on it. You've made your point.
One person at the point, though.
You've made your point. Can we now move on to Councillor O'Brien, please?
Thank you, Chair. I too would
Councillor Murphy, excuse me. It isn't nonsense. I did say earlier on, and I don't want any sort of reprisals coming back on this organisation. So if you want to, I'll happily discuss nonsense with you outside after if you wish. But please, let's just keep it sensible. Thank you. Councillor O'Brien, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. I too would like to thank Councillor Butcher for taking the initiative in bringing this proposal to the Council. And as others have said, to emphasise that this is the Council working collaboratively, working to engage with partners irrespective of political affiliation, and I think that shows the strength of this Council when it puts its mind to taking initiative and working together. So I think all strength to our elbow in that respect. As others have said, a banking hub at Bakewell is really important, not just for the town itself, but for a wide variety of, a wide number of our surrounding communities. And I can assure colleagues and the public that certainly in the work I've done in my ward, there's widespread support for the Council taking the initiative, not claiming credit for this initiative, but the commitment to work with other partners. And I would really commend that approach. And I think it epitomises the approach taken by this Council and recognising that we have a lot of work to do in sustaining all of our communities. Because what's happened in Bakewell on February the 22nd could very well happen in Ashbourne as we move into the future. Thank you,
Chair, I call for a vote under the Constitution, so we have to go to a vote immediately.
Are you asking that the question be put?
I am indeed, sir.
Yeah. Does that find a seconder? Councillor Burford? Just excuse me for a minute. Councillor Hughes, I've got to just ask this question, because at the end of the day, I would like to just let Councillor O'Brien finish, and then we will move to the vote after that.
Okay.
Right, thank you. Councillor O'Brien, would you like to continue? Thank you.
I finish now, Chair. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. So now we will move to the vote, because it has been discussed, and I think, people are broadly supportive of it. So can I ask for those in favour of the recommendation as amended? Thank you. Against? Abstentions? 1. So I find that that motion that is now moved. Thank you very much. We now move on to agenda item 10. Which is the membership of political...
9.
Sorry, my fault. I'm going off 2 things here. So, item 9, to approve the minutes of the previous meeting, and this was the meeting dated the 29th of February 2024. Has everybody had a chance to look at these minutes? Does it find anybody who wish to move them? Thank you. Councillor Slack?
Move those, Chair.
Does anybody find a seconder?
Councillor Buttle.
Councillor Buttle? And can we vote, please? All those in favour of receiving them, sorry. All those against? Any abstentions? Councillor Butler and Councillor O'Brien. Yeah, those minutes are now moved, received. Thank you. We now move on to item 10, which is the membership of political groups and political balance and entitlement to seats on committees. Is it you or Helen, or Jason is going to reply on this? Yeah, I'll hand over to Helen Mitchell. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. A short report under agenda item 10 in respect of membership of political groups. Following the Bakewell and the Norbury by-elections, we've done a very short and very imperfect piece of work in which to bring to members this evening. The recommendations are that the Council notes and agrees the entitlement, which will be a movement of 2 seats from the Conservative group to the Labour group, to be placed on Planning Committee and Licensing Committee. Recommendation 2, which is to continue the departure from the requirements of principles set out in 1.4, which is around political balance and a slightly stronger representation of the Green Party across the Council's committees, and ultimately to agree a review of political balance and entitlement in advance, or well in advance of the AGM in May 2024, to make sure that the size of the committees and the balance within is more in line with genuine political proportionality across the Council. Happy to take questions thereon, Chair, but just to make it clear in respect of the voting on this item, as we'll be departing from the requirements of political balance, we'll need a unanimous vote from the Council's members to allow that to occur. If a unanimous vote does not occur, the changes that have been recommended within this report will not be made, and we will continue with the balance that was agreed at the Council's AGM in May last year. Thank you.
Any questions, please? No questions? Does anybody wish? Councillor Hughes.
Chair, I wish to move this, the recommendations.
Thank you. Does that find a seconder? Councillor Dobbs? Seconded. Do you wish to say anything, Councillor Dobbs? No?
I'm happy to. This is a sensible, pragmatic solution for a short period of time, and I think it's worth to agree with the 3 recommendations. Thank you.
We'll now move into debate. Councillor Slack.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this is a temporary solution. It's only be a few weeks before we discussing it and revising this. It's not ideal for my party at all, but being it's only a temporary for a few weeks, I am personally willing to go with this. But When it comes to, we'll have to discuss this further before the AGM and get to the proper solution to what Labour's entitled to.
Thank you very much. Councillor Peacock.
It's a question, really, but I sort of didn't get my hand up fast enough. It's my understanding that there aren't very many meetings between now and the AGM. There is a planning committee meeting, but is it correct that none of us could join the planning committee anyway because none of us have had the training? So the report is kind of moot.
You just hang on till just checking. Thank you.
Obviously, it's important that members are trained before they go on, particularly the quasi-judicial committees of the council. We have done previously one-to-one sessions with members to bring them up to speed and provide them with a good working knowledge of planning committee and the functions that it discharges. So we are able to do that. We are also going to be organising a full training session for planning committee members soon after the AGM as well, for all members to get a refresh. So for those members, particularly of the Labour group that will be going on to planning committee, we can offer a one-to-one session.
Any more debate, please? Councillor Butcher.
Yes, it feels uncomfortable, this allocation for Labour, and I appreciate the point that there is intended to be further discussion in advance of the AGM, but it feels odd for us to agree to something that we don't agree to at this stage, especially given it's not important for intervening meetings between now and the AGM. So personally, I will be voting against it unless somebody advises otherwise, but it feels like the right thing to do.
That is your choice, and you've made your statement. Any more debate, please? No more debate. So now we move to the vote. All those in favour? You got them? Okay. All those against? And abstentions? So that motion fails, and we will revert and carry on as we are until the AGM in May. Thank you. Right, thank you. Is it agenda item number 11? This is clarifying the decision-making arrangements in respect to the Gypsy Travellers. Helen Mitchell, I think, is going to present this report. And Helen, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So again, another short report under agenda item 11. Bringing this to members this evening, and the timing is important. So as part of the Council's refreshed approach in which to provide ultimately transact its homelessness duties in respect of gypsies and travellers, the report is coming here to clarify decision-making arrangements thereon. Members will recognise that not that long ago, Governance and Resources Committee considered an action plan following the complaint the Council received in respect of Hasker Farm. In that report and ultimately in the action plan, there was an action agreed by the Governance and Resources Committee in which to review the decision-making arrangements in respect of gypsy and traveller issues. The investigators were clear that it was, quote, highly unusual, unquote, for matters to be referred to full council to be discussed. And as such, we took that as an opportunity in which to revisit the current practice around such matters being referred to this body. With the council's constitution, Chair, is clear that homelessness falls within the functions of the Community Environment Committee, and matters relating to gypsies and travellers stem from the Council's homelessness duty. To that end, it feels most appropriate that gypsy and traveller matters are referred to that committee and are discussed and decided upon there instead of full council. But it has become custom and practice that those issues do come to meetings of this body. In developing the report, can I thank members of the Gypsy and Traveller Working Group, to my corporate leadership team, colleagues, and also Councillor Burfoot and Councillor O'Brien for their views going into the report, and for arriving at the recommendations within that. One, ultimately, that this report is agreed, that the Gypsy and Traveller Working Group provides reports on its activities to C&E, and that decisions relating to temporary and negotiated stopping places ultimately go to Community Environment Committee, and that permanent sites, particularly outside of that local plan subcommittee process and the plan for arriving at the local plan, come to Community Environment Committee as well. And that if there are any amendments that need to be made to the Council's constitution in which to make it clear, such as an incorporation of a separate bullet point to go into the terms of reference for the Community Environment Committee, that I'm empowered by Council to do that. Just to be clear that the Council's constitution will be coming to the AGM in May, so you will be able to see my handiwork and be assured of it if members are maybe a little concerned about providing me with that delegated authority. So just to be clear, Chair, it's about changing the custom and practice that the Council has adopted, in which all those matters are coming to this body, to Council, and instead moving it to a smaller group of members, currently a 15-member committee, and to be discussed within that committee's remit. Just to finalise, within the Hasker Farm report, it did state that in other councils such decisions would be taken, particularly those with executive arrangements, that they would be taken either by delegation through an individual executive member or down to an officer. I think it's appropriate, given the issue, that the committee here, the Community Environment Committee, is given that responsibility. And I will leave it there, Chair. I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. It was just some clarification, really. I have read the comments from members of the public and their understandable concerns about due process and transparency. So could I just ask you, just so I've got it clear in my mind as well, that if a potential permanent site were to come before the Community and Environment Committee, it would at some point come to full council, whether that was for funding and then on to planning? So that members of the public would be notified, they would have the opportunity to comment and be consulted at least twice in that process. Thank you.
Sorry, Chair. Thank you. So the arrangements on consultation, I think, were set out as part of the paper that members considered back in September last year, if I remember rightly. Apologies, that was a little bit before my time. This decision before members isn't there to alter that need to consult and to engage with local communities. It's there to allow council and this body to transact its duties that befit its current terms of reference. So if a site requires investment, if a site requires a purchase, for example, those are the kinds of issues and the kinds of decisions that are only reserved for council. So it would go through C&E and then on to council to make the decisions that council has within its remit. And I'm sure Karen would confirm that as well. Thank you.
Councillor Hobson.
Thank you, Chair. The papers for this item were circulated after working hours on a Thursday before a 4-day bank holiday weekend. Is this legal?
Chair, I believe it is legal. We published the agenda 5 clear working days in advance of the meeting, which is statutorily a necessity to do. The item was clearly published on the agenda, frankly, as was the description of the item, and I believe that meets the spirit of the report that is in front of members this evening.
Chair, I'll come back. Even if it is legal, do you not think it's bad practice to distribute reports in this way and it reflects badly on the openness and transparency of this council just to give a headline of what a report is with nothing in it.
Yeah, I take full responsibility for the lateness of the report being published. I was absolutely committed to making sure that members were comfortable with the content of it before it went out, and I've placed very clearly who was consulted as part of the development of this report within. I take full responsibility for that, Councillor Hobson, and the delay. I was clear, though, it is a very, very short report, and also the way in which it was expressed on the agenda, it was absolutely clear what it was getting at. So I apologise if it has caused any members any discourtesy, the delay in which it's been received, but I was very, very keen to make sure that those members who wanted to be involved in this report and the development of it had done so. So apologies if any inconvenience or any discourtesy has been caused to any members as a result of receiving late papers this evening.
Councillor Dobbs.
Thank you, Chair. Just to clarify a point that was raised before. So what was agreed in September, unanimously, everybody in this room voted for it, has not been altered bar one single reference to council, and that's it changed for community environment. And in fact, the same thing which we all voted for references community environment. It's one of the stages that's listed when we voted in September. Thank you.
I was hanging on for a question, but next time, can it be a question, please? Councillor Burford, question.
Yes, Chair. Is it definitely a question? Is it not a fact that members of this council received the agenda for this meeting tonight on the 25th of March, which was earlier last week? It wasn't Thursday night or whatever Councillor Hobson is referring to.
Yes, the date of the publication of the agenda was Monday the 25th of March, but Councillor Hobson is absolutely correct that the report was issued after that, and it was identified on the agenda as to follow.
Any further questions? Would anybody like to move? Councillor Franks? Do you want to just start again, Councillor Franks, and speak into the microphone, please? Thank you.
Miss that. Yes, I certainly would like to propose that we move to accept the recommendations of this report. At this point in time, can I make some remarks and add on to that before we have further discussion?
You say it again, please.
Is it from this point on, can I speak to that?
If you're moving the motion, you can speak to the motion. Right. Thank you.
Okay. I think it's important, to explain some of the reasoning, my own personal reasons. I'm not necessarily representing the PA here, but the importance of moving this and moving it from the very clumsy situation I think we've been in since July 21. Since I've been involved, elected as a councillor, involved with the Gypsy and Traveller Working Group, I was very surprised when I found that all matters were reserved to the full council. And I couldn't understand where that came from. What was the evidence base? Was it good practice? Certainly in my experience of working for a couple of councils, being involved with Gypsy and Travellers, I can't think of any example of good practice where this has occurred. It came as no surprise to me that this situation has led to complaints, it's led to muddle, it's led to lack of leadership. I think it's left members and officers exposed, and quite honestly, I don't think it was surprising that there was complaints and an investigation. As well as leaving officers and members exposed, this has also left travelling families, two very vulnerable families, still in car parks with no facilities, very unsuitable conditions for very vulnerable people. I don't know whether it was some form of experiment or it was something that came about as an argument between officers and members, but certainly whatever it was, it's been a failure. There's been no movement forward, and really we do have to look at what are the advantages of putting this, the decision making, the whole process where it should be, and with the department that deals with homeless families, because basically the Gypsy and Traveller 2 families are homeless families. We shouldn't be distinguishing them, making them an exception to other homeless families. By this change will give far more clarity of role. The Community and Environment Committee will be able to respond more agilely. It'll empower members involved in that and officers. The expertise, that's where the expertise with homelessness and housing lie. We can tap into that. There needs to be much closer involvement with the local plan subcommittee. We need to get away from this proposing sites in our local plan, which then are not delivered. It's ridiculous. It's happened twice. This has been going on for 20 years. Things have to change. I know it's been said, but this is a step backwards. This is a step backwards. It isn't. I see it as a step forward. I see a real step forward. I see a real commitment with members of this council and now with officers. There's a real incentive to move forward. In September, we made vast changes. We have set out a whole system for consulting with members of the public wherever we decide to put sites. We've arranged for an additional post to support the identification of sites and to support the families, the 2 families that we're talking about. I'm very optimistic about the future, and I think we have to move forward. We can't remain in this same old, not so long as it's not in my backyard attitude, which I think has coloured everything for long enough. Nothing is going to change in terms of consultation. That is a worry that keeps cropping up time and time again. There's no consultation with people. There's no transparency. In September, we are the first council that has put forward proper proposals agreed by everybody for consultation. This move to the Community Environment Committee will not change that. Nothing has changed. The other thing that I find extremely irritating, and I don't know if other members do, is that there's this thread, this underlying thread of allegations, implications of secret meetings, hidden agendas, lack of transparency. And we constantly, references in these, some of the statements made by members of the public. I don't know where this is coming from, because it's very, very clear. We will consult. We have to work together. I know one of the members of the Gypsy and Traveller group is vehemently opposed to any change, any move which I see as forward, would consider it as a backward move. But I think it's really important we place this firmly where it belongs, along with the expertise who deal with homeless families. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Maelstrom, you had your hand. Yes, do you want to say something?
I was offering to second the motion.
Yeah, yeah. So that's been moved and it's been seconded. Move into debate. I've just got Councillor Councillor O'Brien, I've got you on the list. Are you wishing to speak in the debate?
Yes, please, Chair.
So it's been moved and seconded, so now we'll go into debate. Thank you. Councillor O'Brien.
Yes, I want to very much support this proposal, and I do so as Chair of the Local Plan Subcommittee and Vice Chair of the Community and Environment Committee. I want to assure members here and members of the public and businesses that both myself and I'm sure all my colleagues on the Local Plan Subcommittee and the Community and Environment Committee are 100% committed to effective public consultation on any proposals for new gypsum traveller sites. As has been pointed out, that the Council has agreed a period agreed last September, a period of consultation on potential new sites, consultation before there is any move to apply for planning permission. And the same would apply to sites which come forward within the local plan process. There will be consultation, full consultation, before any sites are included in a draft local plan. So we are 100% committed to that. And I would remind colleagues that those sitting on this side of the room were not those who supported the previous proposal to move forward with a previous site without any consultation, to move forward straight into site investigations and applications for planning permission without any consultation. So there's a clear difference between the commitment made by the new administration than the approach we've taken in the past. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Buttle.
Thank you very much. I was going to just second it, but while I've got a chance, I'll say that I was on the GNR committee that took the Hasker Farm report, and it was quite clear that the report authors thought it was kind of odd that we had the full council dealing with this, and it wasn't a matter of community environment. So I was definitely going to second this. We are not exactly fast-moving, this council. I'm rather hoping that the community and environment is going to be a little bit more agile on this. And that's pretty much where I've got to on this. So, yeah, I will support this. Thank you.
Councillor Burfoot, Mr.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, first of all, I apologise for asking the question earlier, but I think when you're chair of a committee, you get various drafts of items, and you don't necessarily remember when exactly you receive them. But anyway, I'd like to thank Councillor Franks for her excellent presentation in proposing acceptance of the recommendations for this item. I agree with every one of them. I agree with everything that she said. She spoke very well indeed. But I need to point out that just in case members think that there's going to be less democracy with this decision, we have 15 members on the Community Environment Committee, which I chair, and it's not a subcommittee, as some members of the public have pointed out. I think they probably think that the decision is going to be taken from by the Gypsy and Traveller Working Group. That's not the case at all. We've got 15 members, and there's proportionality between political parties maintained on that committee, as we've seen from the previous item about changes to representation on committees. And I think, in fact, former Councillor Fern, who's here tonight, will probably recall that back in 2015, before he retired from this council, there was a proposal for us, a traveller site, a permanent one in Ashbourne, which was approved by the planning committee at the time. When I got elected in 2015, that was picked up, and we thought, well, we put that in the local plan. So it's been in the current local plan since it was approved in 2017 by the Secretary of State. And what's happened to that one? It's been withdrawn by the Conservative-controlled County Council. So that one's gone by the... by the County Council. Well, I won't say what party it was. By the County Council.
Just tread carefully, Councillor Burfoot,
right,
please.
Okay,
Thank you.
yeah. But I think the other thing to point out is that the Community Environment Committee rarely meets until 10 o'clock at night, and in recent months we've seen some of these meetings of the full council go on until that sort of time because of the weight of business. So, and I think we've had criticism from members opposite that meetings have gone on far too late. It's too much business. So I don't think members opposite can then demand that everything to do with gypsies and travellers is going to be referred to full council. Because I think it's a Community Environment Committee, although it's going to give myself and Councillor O'Brien and other members more work to do in terms of advance warnings and perhaps discussions with officers, it will be beneficial, I think, in terms of getting the issues debated. And there's nothing to stop, of course, other members of the council attending the Community Environment Committee and asking questions and listening to the debate and participating in what decisions are taken. So I do support these recommendations. They are sensible, and I think, as Councillor Franks has said, I think common sense will prevail and we'll get more efficient business approved by that method.
Thank you. Councillor Hobson.
Thank you, Chair. I'm disappointed. I'm very disappointed for the residents and businesses of the Derbyshire Dales, and indeed the travellers stuck on 2 car parks with very basic facilities. I've already asked my question tonight about the lateness of that report being published and the decision that's been taken not to allow me to ask urgent questions of the deputy leaders in the absence of the leader, and people here also and at home who wanted to speak and have been denied a voice. My emails have remained unanswered, and I'm deeply disappointed. You talk about openness and transparency with decision making. Those people sitting at the back, you know, I wonder what planet you're on if you think that these people can just be walked on by the Derbyshire Dales. We've got Derbyshire Dales District Council is 50 years old. This has been produced. I've not produced this. This has been produced by somebody locally today. They feel they have no voice. Derbyshire Dales District Council is 50 years old, which should be a time of celebration. But what does your attitude say about local democracy 50 years on? It's not just gypsies and travellers with this council. Another example of not listening is taking place in Hawleys Park to replace the paddling pool. Listen to your residents and businesses. To consider giving decisions of this magnitude to 15 members is unbelievable. Sandra Lamb, who was for many years the monitoring officer of this council, said that full council should be the daddy of all decision making. And I cannot disagree with that. Listen to your businesses and residents before you instigate these reports. These people have no faith in your consultations. They have no faith. I urge every member here to stand up and be counted. Hey, try and be radical, listening to people before you put these reports out. Go and talk to those directly affected and listen to what they have to say. Please defer this report for further work. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm quite astounded, really, by what Councillor Hobson's insinuating, really. I think there's been a lot of jumping to conclusions, shall we put it like that, on any of this. Councillor Franks has explained very eloquently what is going to happen. There will be consultation. Can I just sort of carry on from what Martin's just said, in that each of our 2 decision-making committees have got political balance. Each party has got its entitlement to seats, and if any member is absent, they can get a substitute. Now, that cannot happen at full council. So in actual fact, the political balance is better on a committee. I think the officers have got this absolutely right on these recommendations. Anyone can come to a community environment meeting. They can speak, they can ask questions, they can listen to the debate. It's all being filmed. There are 2 policy decision-making committees on this council, and when they've made their decisions, if you like, that will then go to full council. So I cannot see why people are saying we're not open and we're not transparent. please, I'm asking the people who have spent their time writing emails and sending in statements, please come along to these community environment meetings. Please come and have your say. You will be listened to. No decisions have been made on where any of these families are going. They have not been made. Thank you.
Councillor Maelstrom, you just seconded it, but you didn't speak. Do you wish to make a comment?
Yes, thank you.
Thank
I
you.
just would like to thank both councillors Burfoot for clarifying how the Community and Environment Committee operates, that it is a fully transparent, politically proportionate committee to which any member of the public can go, listen and make their own representations. Just in relation to the Gypsy and Traveller Working Group, I'd also like to offer some clarification and some assurance to the public that similarly, in fact, I can't think of any other working group that is as transparent as the Gypsy and Traveller Working Group. Our minutes are published to all the members, not publicly, I don't think, but they go to all the members. This particular proposal was on the agenda and was discussed at the meeting we had on the 1st of March, at which Councillor Hobson was present. She expressed her view on this proposal at that meeting. She was listened to, she was outvoted, and the decision was made to bring this recommendation to full council today. The minutes of that meeting were circulated shortly after that meeting to all members of this council. So I don't think it's at all fair to say that anybody has been caught by surprise by this agenda item.
Thank you very much. Councillor Dobbs.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, clearly as a council, we're not doing a terribly good job in communicating how we operate, and perhaps that could be looked at. But I do find in Councillor Hobson's indignation a distinct lack of substance. I don't quite see what it is that you are so concerned about. I, as a member of the public, turned up at the community environment for 3 years and made my point. You can, and all the information is there. You have to look for it. If you think our website isn't any good, try the County Council's website for finding stuff. We're actually a model of accessibility. There is no problem in democracy working here, and I can't quite see what your concerns are. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Councillor Murphy.
Thanks, Chair. I can tell you what the problem is. A lot of the public don't trust us, and they think there's been too many instances recently that have put us in a bad light, and it's going to take us quite a while to recover from that. We've actually got investigations that are still going on, questions still to be answered. So, you know, that's where we're coming from. What have you got to lose by bringing these things to the full council? What are you scared of? You know, what are you scared of? Are you trying to close me down now, are you? Because you don't like what I'm saying? No, I bet. We know what's going to happen. It's so funny. It is so funny.
Councillor Murphy, can you just rise above that? If there's anything there, can you just keep to your point, please? Thank you.
I recall the previous full council meeting where you had an agenda item to discuss temporary tolerated sites that you wanted to bring back that had been taken off the list because, you know, a good sensible committee of a cross-party went out, visited sites, and it was decided by the members that certain sites were not to be looked at because they weren't practical and there was all sorts of issues. Now you want to bring them back. Nothing's actually changed. By this mechanism of you going to committees and whatever, people are starting to think, you're looking at another means of actually being able to actually foist some of those sites on communities around this district. And with, as I just said, things have happened recently, people are not happy. So, you know, you're going to have to go a long way to convince people this is a good move. I ask that this is a recorded vote, because I'm sure this is going to generate some issues going forward. It's all right looking shocked. So could I ask for a recorded vote, please?
That will be a recorded vote when we get there. And Councillor Hughes, you wanted to speak.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Murphy. I often agree with what you say, and I certainly agree with the first part of what you said on this occasion. And I was smiling because I was agreeing with what you said, not because I was disagreeing with what you said or thought it was wrong. You're quite right. We have a lot of ground to make up in terms of the trust with which the public holds this council. And we on this side, really want to move to a point where that trust is improved. And what we've found is that we've had a number of years on previous occasions when we've been making decisions about travellers and where we can put sites. And on each of those occasions, it was done behind closed doors. So the one that I was particularly concerned about was one where information leaked out about one site in Clifton, Ashbourne, and no other sites did the information leak out. And as a result of that, we got a lot of correspondence from Clifton and no correspondence from any other sites, any other locations. There was a lack of transparency then. There are other occasions when there has been a lack of transparency. The way this is going to operate will allow the sites to come to recommendations about sites will be made by the working group. Those will go into public discussion at the C&E committee, and then if there's any funding requirement, it'll go to public discussion again at the council, and again when those sites are put forward for planning, there'll be further public discussion at each point. So there will be at least 3 points during the life of a decision when there will be public discussion, and at the first one there will I'm sure be alternative sites put forward, or perhaps there won't, but the sites will be put forward in public, and members of the public will be able to see the reports. They'll be able to come and talk to the C&E committee. They'll be able to come and talk to the council. They'll be able to come and talk at the planning decisions. So at all of those stages, it is open to the public. It'll be open decision making. So thank you very much for your intervention, Councillor Murphy. I always enjoy them, and I hope to enjoy a few more. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Councillor Slack.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to thank Councillor O'Brien, Councillor Burford, Councillor Maelstrom and Councillor Franks for bringing this forward. Very good indeed. It's perfectly obvious that moving to the Environment Committee is the right way to go. It'll broaden it out more. We can have substitutes, as Councillor Burford said, if someone's missing. It's better balanced altogether, and people can come and speak and point their point of view. I'm afraid on the other side, I don't think they no intentions of trying to help us to succeed. I think they continuously throw cold water on everything we do, so I don't think we can ever convince them, but there we go. But we will move forward on this, and last night I was speaking to the ward member in Matlock Bath, and he's fully agreement in moving forward to the Environment Committee. And the people in Matlock Bath have been there a long time, and it is time we couldn't move them if possible, and we do everything possible to do that. If we could get proper sites eventually, that's what we're looking for. We will do our best, and we've got a company now called ARC, which is looking for land all over the district. So we will try our very best, and coming to community environment is more sensible, very more sensible. The fiasco at council, which we saw in September, it doesn't help at all. And some of the accusations what are flying about gypsies are wrong. They're totally wrong. So I would like to say I'd support everything what's been said by, and Councillor Franks' very good submission is indeed. So I'm sorry if you disagree with us.
Thank you, Councillor Slack. Councillor Chapman.
I'd just like to state, Chair, that I take offence at Councillor Slack's ad hominem comments.
Right, you've spoken in the debate, so anybody else who wishes to speak in the debate? If not, we'll move to the vote. All those in favour of the 6 recorded vote? Yeah. So I'm going to hand on to Lucy now then.
Councillor Bates. Councillor Boothroyd. Councillor Buckler. Councillor Martin Burfoot. Councillor Sue Burfoot. Councillor Burton.
4.
Councillor Butcher.
4.
Councillor Buttle. Councillor Chapman.
Abstain.
Councillor Dobbs.
4.
Councillor Edwards Walker. Councillor Franks. Councillor Gretrix.
4.
Councillor Hobson.
Against.
Councillor Hughes.
4.
Councillor Lees. Councillor Linthwaite.
4.
Councillor Maelstrom.
4.
Councillor Murphy. Councillor Nash.
4.
Councillor O'Brien. Councillor Peacock.
4.
Councillor Ripton.
4.
Councillor Shelley. Councillor Slack.
4.
Councillor Wayne.
4. That motion's therefore carried. Thank you. We'll now move on to agenda item number 12, which is the referred items from the policy committees. And I stress the word referred items. These have already gone through a policy committee and been recommended for 2 new bids, including the capital programme. What we're being asked to do is the 3 recommendations on the funding. The actual process of it has gone through and we're just discussing the funding. So, Karen, are you going to present this report? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this report seeks approval for 2 new bids to be included in the capital programme and the associated changes to financing to allow that. As the Chair has just said, these new bids have been discussed and approved by the 2 policy committees, 1 for each of the new bids, and the 2 reports that went to those committees are shown as appendices to this one, so that you've got the full information.
Somebody will help you. Just 1 minute. Thank you very much. Let me just hang on a minute while...
Okay.
Would you like to carry on? Thank you.
For the Hollies Park scheme, grant funding makes up £460,737. That's 62% of the total estimated cost of £740,000, with the balance proposed to be funded from capital receipts. For the energy efficiency scheme at the depot, a third of the scheme costs are funded by grants of £51,380, with £101,757 proposed to be funded from capital receipts. The report proposes a change in funding for Project 693, John Higgs Almshouses, to be moved from capital receipts to Section 106 agreements. This is because we've become aware of further Section 106 agreements and funding available since that project was initially included. Members are probably aware that Section 106 funding is restricted to certain activities. In this regard, the Section 106 funding that's available can only be used for affordable housing. So it makes sense to change the method of funding for the John Higgs Almshouse scheme to Section 106 agreements. That has the first advantage that we actually use the Section 106 before it expires. But also, it means that the capital receipts that would have been used for that project are now available to fund schemes other than housing, and in particular could be used partly for these 2 new projects. So I'm asking members to approve the 3 recommendations. Thank you.
Any questions for Karen? Councillor Hughes, you were first.
Chair, I had a question for Ashley Watts, so may I defer to talking in debate rather than asking a question? Thank you.
Yes, you can. Anybody with any questions for Karen? If not, do we find a proposer for this? Councillor Dobbs?
I'm happy to propose, Chair, and can I return to debate later on? Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Hughes, you put your hand up.
Chair, I'll second this motion. And can I just introduce the point I was going to make at this stage? It was really referring to some of the expenditure items on in Hall Lees Park, and particularly the proposal to put in a splash pad to replace the children's pond that's there at the moment, and which was referred to by a member, I can't remember who it was, Sue Hobson, earlier on. And I talked to Ashley Watts about this earlier on, I think it was last week, because there's a lot of interest in the community. Some people would like the pond to remain and the splash rather than be changed to a splash pad. And as I understand it, and I had it from Ashley Watts, he is consulting with members of the public, including those who have put together a petition associated with retaining the pond, and he and the team in his team is clear that they are intending to, or they are actually consulting members of the public about what replaces the current arrangement, which is past its sell-by date. So there is consultation going on. As I understand it, I was going to ask Ashley Watts how it was going, but as he's not here, I can't do that. So perhaps I will ask him by email. Oh, sorry. Yes, I can. Okay. Would you be able to?
Vicky, would you like to answer those questions? Thanks.
Yeah, apologies. Ashley's on leave today, so he asked me to come in his place, if that's okay. So in terms of the splash pad, the procurement for that's going to happen in 2 stages. So for the first stage, we'll be going out to companies to provide designs and schemes. And then once they've been obtained, we'll then be going out to consultation with the public on what they would like to see there. There is obviously, as you're aware, quite tight timescales with regards to the implementation of this particular grant funding, so that in terms of the procurement, there will be some quite more weighting to the timescales and the price, but there will be consultation with the public, and we'll make sure that's on social media. There'll be information on the park for people how to do that, and we've already engaged with a few people, including the petition holder, in terms of making sure that there's some people there with families with disabilities that are included in that consultation. So we're hoping that's going to be able to provide some reassurances in terms of what's going to be there in the future.
Thank you.
Councillor Shelley.
Thank you. Yes, 2 questions, Chair. Just one on the...
We're in debate, I'm afraid.
Oh,
now.
my apologies.
Can you make your debate items more statements than questions, maybe?
I will endeavour to do that, yes. So I wonder if the opportunity to consult the public will include the ability to retain something which could be considered to be a paddling pool rather than a splash pad. That's a hypothetical question, but I'd dearly like to seek an answer from somebody who may know.
In terms of the paddling pool, as it's sort of been mentioned in the report and was mentioned at C&E, the actual maintenance and upkeep of that pool is really expensive. In addition, the flooding aspect of Hall Lees Park has a financial impact on that. A splash pad is more robust in terms of if that does happen, which is likely to happen in the park again. The last time it did flood, it cost £20,000 to bring it back into operation. So there was a lot of discussions about all of the splash pads, because the other 2 in Bakewell and Ashbourne are also coming to the end of their sell-by date, and we are looking to seek capital funding in the future to replace those. So this funding has come available, which has obviously presented an opportunity to do that sooner, but that having a pool is not really an option, unfortunately, moving forwards. The splash pad is more environmentally friendly in terms of the water and how it's retained and used. The resource on a weekend, we have to get people in on overtime to do all the, obviously all of the chemical testing. So the decision was always to replace it with a splash pad and to consult with the public on what they would like to see in its place.
Thank you. Councillor O'Brien, in debate.
Thank you, Chair. I'd echo the comments made by my colleagues here. I want to ensure, I want to be certain that consultation on the Aldi's Park is not preempted by any decisions which may or may not be made in the interim. I'm also always very concerned when we are told as members that funding deadlines means that our options are limited. I think when we're looking at something which is a long-standing project for the benefit of the Matlock community, we need to put the community first, and we need to look at ways of, what I'm saying is I don't want us to be dictated to by the fact that we have to spend money by a certain date.
Thank you. Councillor Hobson.
Thank you, Chair. We've already had a debate about consultation, and this seems like we're back at square one, that there'll only be the splash pad. That's all there's going to be, when quite patently lots of people do want different options. That's my comment about consultation. Thank you.
Thank you. I've nobody else on my list for Councillor Burford. Mr.
Or perhaps going back 50 years, Mr. Chairman, as former Councillor Fern would be familiar with. Yes, I support these recommendations, not surprisingly, as I've been consulted about them. And I thank Vic Hatfield for a phone call earlier this afternoon in reply to various questions that I'd asked. We are going to consult with the public, but as she's pointed out, there are so many problems with paddling pools. In fact, funny enough, I was going to mention a paddling pool. There's one in the park at the moment between the toilets and the cafe, because it's permanently, there are seats permanently surrounded by water with all this rain we've had. And you notice every time it dries out, there's mud there, which is very unpleasant and probably dangerous for children as well. And that's, in a way, it illustrates one of the points, one of my objections to paddling pools. There are a lot of trees in that area, and you've got a lot of winds currently with climate change. Probably we're having very regular windy and wet days. And of course, the leaves in autumn get blown into the pool, and the debris from those is quite unpleasant and tends to be very slippery for young children if they're going into a shallow pool. So I think I'm reassured that the solution that's being proposed in these recommendations is going to be more successful than the present paddling pool. Although I do have reservations about the resin-bonded surfacing, which I think we need to put some drainage in to address these problems of standing water on these paths in the park beforehand. But going back to the decision about the splash pads, I don't think there's any doubt now that they're going to be preferable to a paddling pool. But we are going to consult, as Vicky has pointed out, with the public on the type. And of course, we go back, don't we, to the present situation nationally, where local authorities have to bid for funding, limited funding for projects. And of course, the timescale is always short. I agree with Councillor O'Brien that it's not ideal, but what can we do if these improvements have got to be completed by a year's time from now, and we haven't even consulted on the type of splash pads that we're going to put forward yet? It means that if we're going to carry out this work during reasonable weather conditions, not in another monsoon season next winter, then they have to be done, unfortunately, during the busiest periods of the year in terms of use of all these parks. So that said, I think I'd like to certainly support the 4 recommendations here, particularly the first 3. And I suppose I should say something about the John Higgs almshouses, as they're in my ward in Matlock. And they've always been very popular with elderly people. So I think it's time that they were enhanced and refurbished, similar to the ones at Matlock Green, actually, which have been done in the last couple of years. And they look very successful. I've been around some of those in the past. And the work that's been done there, masterminded, I think, by Rob Coggins, our Director of Housing, has been quite impressive. So if that continues with the John Higgs Arms houses, then that will be admirable, I think. So I certainly support the resolution.
Councillor Chapman.
Thanks, Chair. Councillor Burfoot's sort of made the point that I was going to make, that Councillor O'Brien made. The fact is, Peter, if we don't spend the UK SPF in the timescale allocated, it goes back to the government.
Thank you. Councillor Lees.
Yeah, I'm a bit confused, to be honest. So consultation then with the public are getting no choice as to whether they want a paddling pool or a splash pad. Then they're just going to get a splash pad of some design, no pool whatsoever. So they haven't got a choice of a paddling pool.
I'll take that as a statement.
Thank you.
But Vicky might like to answer to your statement. Thank you.
That's correct in terms of it's not going to be retained as a paddling pool. And like I said sort of previously, we were looking at replacing the pool due to the exceptional costs it cost the council. And at this point in time where we have to be mindful of that, we're looking at alternative options that will still provide a multi-sensory experience for all children with all abilities. And I think you might be surprised when you see it how good it will look. Obviously the two that we've got at the moment are probably not good examples of what that will look like. But it will have a number of different functions where you can move bits of equipment from one area to another area, so it's a little bit more, I suppose, I don't know what the word is, but you can move it around so it's a little bit more different from year to year, and we could buy additional bits of kit to add on to it in future years as well. So I think, although there's some concerns around it by some members of the public, I think the end product, I'm sure they will be happy with.
Thank you. Councillor Slack.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I do support this application. In regards to, we've discussed about getting grants and you've really got to be prepared today and have, if you've got a project, you've got to be prepared and have it costed and have it planned ready, because these grants come along suddenly and you've got to be there to grab hold of them. So I think it's something we've got to learn to do, and different parishes and town councils have to be prepared and have a plan ready for all these different grants which come along suddenly. So something we've got to do in the Dales. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Mrs. Burfoot.
I'm going to admit to being somewhat confused here. We're talking about splash pads. Am I okay to ask a question? It's just come to me. I know, but I need to know. Yeah, I need to know personally what different sorts of splash pads there are. Are there numerous sorts of splash pads, some of which look more like a paddling pool? I mean, you know, I'm very conscious that the public think that a splash pad is nothing like a paddling pool. So I'm kind of hoping that there are some sorts of splash pads that are more like a paddling pool. I'm just wondering whether I'm right, because I am confused.
Not really, no. So, Councillor Boothroyd.
Can I just, in contribution to that debate, I quickly have been Googling splash pads. They look like quite a lot of fun. There is so many different designs out there for various categories of splash pad. There's one at Arc Leisure in Matlock that comes up. So, you know, there's, just have a Google. They do look really good fun.
Thank you, Councillor Peacock.
I'd just like to say, in relation to splash pads, so my kids loved that paddling pool at Matlock, but they also loved splash pad type arrangements in other places. They are good. I think the difference is being overstated a little bit here. I can see that sometimes cost means that we only have a certain number of options, but there are some really good options that you can have with the splash pad.
Right, I think we've explored splash pads and pools as greatly, and I don't think we need to debate this matter anymore. We'll move to the vote. So can I ask that the 4 recommendations, can we move to the vote? All those in favour, please. And those against? Any abstentions? 3. So that motion is carried. Thank you very much. Agenda 13 on my forms here. By-election result. No. Sorry, yes it is. Sorry, it is. Taxi, the Licensing Appeals Committee. Again, this has been through the committee, and it's the review of the final draft Hackney Carriage private hire policy. And what we've got 2 recommendations, and I'd like to introduce you to Grace. If you've not met her, this is the new licensing officer. Grace, would you like to say a few words about the report? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Good evening, members, and hello. This report seeks to seek approval of the final draft of the taxi and private hire licensing policy for adoption and republishing with effect from the 1st of May 2024. The Council introduced its first taxi and private hire licensing policy in February 2009, and this has been reviewed regularly with the current policy introduced in 2018. The overriding aim of taxi licensing is the protection of the public and others who use or have an interest in licensing taxi and private hire service. This is achieved by a robust taxi and private hire licensing policy, which sets out various standards and procedures to be followed by the licensees, the officers and elected members in administering taxi and private hires across the district. The latest review of the policy was delayed by the introduction of the taxi standards, which was a statutory taxi and private hire vehicle standards introduced by the Department of Transport in 2021. This acted as a prompt for all councils to review and update their policies to achieve a consistent approach to managing the regulation of taxi and private hire licensing. The taxi standards focuses on protecting children and vulnerable adults and including extensive advice on checking the suitability of individuals and operators to be licensed. The proposed revisions of the final draft of the taxi and private hire licensing policy takes into consideration those taxi standards. It also contains measures to replace relevant sections of the best practice guidance issued by the Department of Transport previously in 2010, which prior to the recent taxi standards was the only government guidance licensing for ourselves, the licensing authorities, to look at. The proposed policy in Appendix 1 of the report ensures that all the standards are met. A summary of the changes are provided in the list at Appendix 2. A draft policy, as the Chair had confirmed, was agreed for consultation by the Licensing and Appeals Committee in June 2023. This was followed by a consultation exercise which took place between the 1st of September and the 31st of October 2023. The consultation responses were reported to the December 2023 Licensing and Appeals Committee. The Licensing and Appeals Committee at that time revised the officer recommendations to adopt the draft taxi and private hire licensing policy, subject to 2 further amendments. Those amendments are the requirement for an enhanced DBS check for owners and part owners of licensed vehicles be incorporated at Appendix C, and the introduction of an option to license vehicles for a period of 6 months in exceptional circumstances be incorporated into the draft policy. Both of these amendments have been added to the final draft document produced in Appendix 1. The recommendations are in the report for members to consider, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you, Chair.
Any questions, please? No questions? Not at all? That's fair enough. So would anybody like to, Councillor Hughes?
Chair, yes, I'd like to move the recommendations with an additional recommendation.
What would that additional
Right,
recommendation be?
The additional recommendation would be, I note in section 8 paragraph 8.1 of the report that there are no climate change implications for this policy. However, there may not be any, because there's no change in the type of vehicles, then the new policy will incur the same climate impact as the present policy. So there are climate implications, and therefore I would want I'd like this policy to be reviewed by the climate officer to determine what those implications are, and to look at what can be done about incorporating vehicles that are less climate damaging than the current internal combustion engine vehicles. Now, as I understand it from talking with Grace and others, and Peter Dobbs, it is not really possible to amend this policy because it's been out for consultation. We need to pass this policy as it stands, really, to make sure that we move forward. But therefore I would want to request the following as a third recommendation, and it's a bit long, but I've given a copy to Helen Mitchell, so she can refer to it. The policy is the additional recommendation is as follows: the policy is referred to the climate officer for review and to determine the climate impact of using internal combustion engine vehicles for private hire, and to provide recommendations for the migration to electric vehicles for licensed use to be incorporated in the next version of the policy, subject to recommendation 2. And of course, recommendation 2 says that it's the the licensing committee that will produce the final recommendations, and they will then go to, I gather, would go to consultation following that. So the proposal is really a change in the next policy, not in this policy. Thank you.
Thank you. Which Helen Mitchell did you give that to then, Councillor Hughes?
The monitoring officer, Helen Mitchell.
Yeah. Well, do you have a paper copy of it there?
I don't. It's on her email.
Right. So does that find a seconder with that amendment? Councillor Buttle?
Yes, thank you very much. Definitely in favour. We really need to start thinking about how we can alter the internal combustion engine pollution in Ashbourne in particular due to the air quality management plan. And I'd very much like us to follow this up. So yes, I'm definitely going to second this. Second the amendment, that is.
Right, so it's been moved and seconded as amended. Can we just move into debate? Anybody got anything to say on this matter? Councillor Chapman?
Yeah, while we're at it, why don't we make a proposal that every councillor migrates to an electric vehicle? This is really unfair on taxi drivers in general. I mean, you're talking 40,000 pounds to an industry, if that's the right thing to call it, that really isn't. That it's not a lucrative industry. I mean, a lot of those taxi drivers are really struggling, but to force on them the fact that they've got to buy an electric vehicle to be granted a license, I feel is really unfair. And as long as the vehicle conforms to UK emission standards, I think it's only fair to say that that would be sufficient, certainly in my mind.
Thank you. Councillor Peacock?
I'd just like to respond to that, really. Nobody's talking about forcing people to move from one to the other immediately. We're talking about in the long term. But I would like to say that most city taxis are Priuses. It's not a thing. We're all about trying to put the additional incentives there to encourage the move. It doesn't necessarily mean at all that people suddenly have to pay lots of money that they can't afford.
Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Chair. Just making a comment on the practicalities of the amendment, which I fully support the ambition of. as the next review is not until 2029, is it practical to ask the climate change officer to undertake this sort of review now? Is it perhaps not more appropriate that it's dovetailed in with the next review process? Because I'm concerned that if we review something in 2024, technologies and legislation changes quite rapidly in this field. So my concern is that we might be doing work in 2024. By the time we get around to the review in 2029, the work we've done now might be rather outdated.
Thank you.
Could I answer that, Chair,
You
please,
can,
or
yeah.
comment? We have recently had further legislation which came out in November 2023, whilst this review was already taking place. That was advised to the Licensing and Appeals Committee, and the decision was made, and rather to add further legislation and go out for a further consultation, that this item would come to yourselves for final agreement or approval if the members feel so. So it is likely that there is going to be a review sooner than the 5 years. Ultimately, if there was any important legislation that came in during that 5 years, then we would look at the policy at any point throughout the period and consult accordingly.
Thank you. Councillor Dobbs.
Thank you, Chair. I think the thrust of Councillor Hughes' amendment is just to keep this on the radar. It was actually true in the last Licensing and Appeals Committee that aspect to do with wheelchair-equipped minibuses had kind of not taken that on board. And so I think the amendment will keep it on the radar as we go forward, and I think that's important. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Woodclub.
Yeah, I think the asking the climate change officer to review it is a very sensible idea. You know, when you look at point 4.10, the Department of Transport guidance asks licensing authorities to consider how far their vehicle licence policies can and should support any local environmental policies that they may have adopted. They suggest that authorities may, for example, wish to consider setting vehicle emission standards, perhaps by promoting cleaner fuels. I think if Joe can look at all of that, so I get the point about we don't want to move everybody, we don't want to insist that everybody goes onto EVs immediately, but I think if we can look at it and say how can we make this better at every available opportunity, then that seems like a sensible thing to do.
Thank you, Councillor Lees.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Like Councillor Chapman said, I think we're being very unfair myself to the taxi drivers because we're not living in a city, we're living in a rural area. And some of these taxi drivers, they get off by probably 2 vehicles because you're not even probably going to get to an airport in some places, you know. So I think we're being a bit too ambitious, I think, at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hughes, you heard what Councillor O'Brien said, and you've got a flavour of what people are saying, and Grace here has said that there might be a review period in a lot shorter time period. I think we need to embrace it, but we need to probably just do a little bit of change on your wording, if that's possible.
Chair, I would like to just come back on some of the points. First of all, I made the proposal fully knowing that from Grace that there was likely to be a review in the short term, and therefore it would be possible to then incorporate changes in vehicle type or propulsion type quite quickly. There are no recommendations in the recommendation doesn't include any specific policy statements. It's, as somebody said, it's keeping something on the table. Peter Dobbs said it's keeping something on the table for further discussion and to ensure that the climate is considered when determining policy, which we should be doing. I've just got a few facts for Councillor Chapman. looking quickly on the internet, Seven Oaks in Kent has produced surveyed their taxi drivers, and they typically drive 32,000 miles a year, 32,500 miles a year. Now it takes you get a benefit from an electric vehicle after about 70,000 miles. So it starts to, the carbon footprint of an electric vehicle is better than an internal combustion engine vehicle at about 70,000 miles. So 2 years use of a taxi would get you to that point. Now taxis are driven for 10 years, and during that time, if they're doing 32,500 miles, they'll do 320,000 miles. And I'm sure we've all been in old Nissan taxis that have done that sort of mileage. I certainly have in other countries. So, and they are fully able to compete to provide that benefit. Therefore, over a longer period, there are certainly Teslas on the road which have done 300,000 miles with their single battery, and there's a lot of the idea that batteries die quickly is now known to be false. So the other point about is the cost of the vehicle. Now, yes, you're quite right. Electric vehicles do cost more than petrol vehicles, but as a taxi driver, they would be able to purchase, reduce their tax burden, income tax burden on the cost of the electric vehicle. There are methods of doing that, and they can make use of lower price per mile low cost per mile driving. So if they are doing 125 miles a day, which is typically what a taxi driver does, they would be able to drive a taxi for at least 1 day, probably 2. They could get to certainly the local airports as far as Manchester, Leeds, Bradford, East Midlands Airport. They could do all those, return easily on a single battery, and so they could charge from home. Now we have 2 electric vehicles, so Councillor Chapman, we are adopting that process of moving to electric vehicles. We use Octopus Intelligent Go, or Intelligent Octopus Go. Our cost per mile of running our electric cars is less than 2 pence per mile. Less than 2 pence per mile. So if you're doing 125 miles in a day, it's costing you £2.40 a day, £2.50 a day. I don't know what it costs in a petrol car. It's a lot more than that. And given the mileage that these cars do, they would be quids in over the life of the vehicle. So, Councillor Chapman, yes, there is a higher capital cost. It works out at about 30-40% more than the capital cost of a petrol vehicle, but they will get income tax relief on that, some of that, and they will have a much lower cost of ownership going forward if they keep the car for 10 years. So thank you very much.
And the amendment?
The amendment stands.
You want to send it as it is? If you bring it to Helen, and then she can bring it forward. Yeah, if you would, please. Thank you. So I think what we're doing is it's been moved and seconded as recommendations 1 and 2, with the addition of a recommendation 3, which will be read out by Helen Mitchell. Thank you.
So, Chair, it is the policy is referred to the Climate Change Officer for review and to determine the climate impact of using internal combustion engine vehicles for private hire, and to provide recommendations for the migration to electric vehicles for licensed vehicles to be incorporated in the next version of the policy, subject to recommendation 2.
Right. So if we now move to the vote, it's been moved and it's been seconded with that amendment. All those in favour, please. Those against, please. And finally, abstentions. Right, that motion is carried as the amended motion is carried. Thank you. Right, we are now at agenda item by-election results report by the returning officer. Mr Wilson's unable to be here this evening, so I think Helen's going to speak to us about this one. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. A very short report, and that's to note the results of the by-elections held on the 22nd of February 2024.
Any questions for anybody in relation to this report, please? No? Does anybody wish to move the recommendation? Councillor Slack? Councillor Dobbs seconding. So it's been moved and it's been seconded. We'll move into debate. Has anybody got anything that they wish to talk about?
Yes, Chair. Just to say, what a sad turnout at Norbury. It's very, I don't know, 27%. It's not good.
Thank you. Anybody else? If not, we'll move to the vote. All those in favour, please vote. All those against? And any abstentions? That motion is carried. And I'd like to thank everybody for attending this evening, and we'll see you in May. And a particular thanks to David Fern for coming along. Thank you very much. Everybody have a safe journey home. Thank you very much. Take care. Bye-bye.